Hi, and welcome to a little short introduction to open G tuning. This is a tuning that is fun to mess around with, just kind of doodle around and find interesting things, new things. It's also been used a lot in the past by artists, so if you want to play some of their songs, notable Leo Kaki and other things like that. Some familiarity with open G tuning is going to be necessary. So I'm just going to quickly run through a little bit of the basics, very basics about open G tuning, what the strengths and what the weaknesses are. So hopefully, you can, if you haven't used this tuning, you can try it and have some fun learning new things, finding new things. So we have the guitar in standard tuning right now. G chord. So I'm just going to quickly run down how I approach every new open tuning that I use, or any altered tuning for that matter. And to do that, you need to know at least the very basics of some music theory. And so I'm just going to apply this like I would in the key of G major. And we're just going to look at the chords in the G major scale. So as we know, you got G, and then the next is A minor. The next is B minor. The next is C. The next is D. The next is E minor. The next is F sharp diminished. And then the next is G. So in bar chords it would look like so that's just the basic chord structure for G major. 1 chord is major, 2 chord is minor, 3 chord is minor, 4th chord is major, 5 chord is major or dominant 7, and 6 chord is minor, and 7 chord is diminished, and then you're back to the tonic again. So to get into G tuning, you're going to drop your A string down to G. And you're going to drop your E string down to D. Then you're going to drop your top E string down to D as well. So now you have this nice open rich G chord, just playing, strumming the whole strings. So one of the reasons I got into open G tuning was Leo Kaki, to learn his songs. But back when I was a teenager trying to learn rock songs, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't make my electric guitar sound like some of the rock songs like the Rolling Stones that I would hear, like Start Me Up. And I could find the chords on the electric guitar in standard tuning, but it didn't sound right. Or Brown Sugar, you know. So I just didn't know that Keith Richards played his guitar in open G tuning all the time. So it would have been a lot easier to get those songs right if I had known that at the time. Plus it's a lot easier to, if all you're doing is sort of the Chuck Berry rock and roll it's a lot shorter reach than doing this all day, right? Like you would do in standard tuning. So, back to some of the music theory now that we've got distracted by the Rolling Stones. But I'm just going to show you the G major scale chords, and that's where you need to start to explore a new tuning. You need to know, where the chords are. So I'm going to show you my approach. Every time I get to try a new open tuning or altered tuning, this is the first step that I go through. Well, in this open G tuning, we haven't altered these three strings. They're the same that they were in standard tuning. It's a G chord. So all the shapes on those three strings are going to be the same as they have been. So a G chord, C chord, D chord, G chord, C, D chord, C chord, D chord, G, E minor, D, C, B minor, A minor, G. So those haven't changed at all. So that's the first important thing to realize about this tuning is you're very familiar with that middle part of the fretboard because it's unchanged. Now what has changed is all the other strings, so we have to figure out where the chords are with that. So just using this inversion on the very highest three strings, I'm going to find the chords of the G major scale. So obviously that's G major, that's A minor, that's B minor, that's C, that's D, that's E minor, that's F sharp diminished, and I'm back to G. So I've found all my chords of the major scale on these top three strings. Because the next three strings I already know, because those are unchanged. The next thing that I need to do is find the chords on the next three strings down. So that's a G major chord. And that's A minor, B minor, C, D, E minor, and then the F sharp diminished, and back to G. So now I've explored and I've found all my chords of the G major scale on each of the strings. So now I can make the chords, like if I want to play a G, obviously it's open. If I want to play an A minor, I can add the bass note, hit those. So I found all my chords of the major scale. If I just want to play it on the middle strings, can do that. So now I know where all my chords are, and so that would be, once again, the first thing that I would do at any altered tuning is I would want to find those inversions in those chords. So what are the strengths of open G tuning? Well, it's really easy to get an alternating bass pattern going. So if you're just learning alternate thumb picking, open G tuning is a fun way to start because it's so easy to get that pattern going. It's easy to play in G major, but it's very difficult to play in G minor because you always have that open major third, and anytime you hit an open string, that's going to be contrary to the G minor scale. So I think open G tuning is great for playing in major keys, but it's very awkward to play in any minor keys. So it's not something I would ever compose a song in a minor key because it's very difficult. So another thing that's really great about open G tuning is that you can do the thirds, double stops some people call them, but the major and minor thirds sound great just strumming the chords. So you can come up with all kinds of melodic possibilities with those. The other thing that's kind of easy to do in open G tuning is sort of walking bass lines. Because it's so easy to, all you need is that one finger to make the chord. So the weaknesses of, once again, of open G tuning would be trying to play in a minor key. And if you're trying to play harmonically complex music, it's not ideal either. I saw an interview with Leo Kaki where he said that one of the reasons he doesn't play an open G tuning anymore, he did early in his career, but he doesn't now because it's too limiting harmonically. And I can certainly understand that. Be very difficult to play jazz or anything in a minor key in open G tuning. But once you do get familiar with the tuning and you start learning, for instance, this would be a G major 7 chord, G dominant 7, G6. Once you start playing around with those, you can find some interesting chords. So if you're willing to put in the time and find the altered notes in a chord, you can have fun exploring different chords. So that's a basic just introduction to open G tuning, and just tune to that and have some fun. This is one of the first tunes that I wrote in open G tuning, just playing around finding notes. It's called Ginger Cake Acres.